I'm aware it's been a while since I made one of these type of videos, and I think that's mainly been because I've been taking a break from video making, blaming Robo Wars for that. But no, I am still very much here doing my own thing with a new survival series coming out very soon. But before that pops up, I came across something that I thought was really stupid and needed addressing. The situation is kind of a three-way, not like that, between Rev Says Desu, Darling Storb, and a VTuber named Nyara. And just looking at that description kinda explains some of it. With emphasis on the word kinda. Now, Rev and Storb sort of dealt with this already, and they were actually rather civilized-ish about it all. Too bad I ain't the same way when it comes to making these type of videos. And given the topic, Jesus Christ. Now look, I don't give a rat's ass if you identify as trans or not. Honestly, couldn't give any less of a shit if I tried. Because I don't care. I don't care if you're trans. You're an adult. What I do care about, however, is how you act. Meaning if you act like a total prick, I ain't gonna respect you regardless of what bloody flag you fly. Quick lesson on how respect actually works. Respect isn't like a free sample cookie. It's something you must earn. At the primary school I went to, our shirt had a slogan that read, "Treat others the way you want to be treated," which basically translates to, respect others, they'll respect you. Which is something I feel like a bunch of people seem to have forgotten completely. Respect is something you have to earn. It's not something you demand. If you act like you demand respect, then you're far less likely to actually get it as opposed to someone who doesn't. Treat others the way you want to be treated. That is a very powerful slogan, and that's something I try to follow. And I do a fairly good job of that, honestly. He'll say otherwise, but he's irrelevant, so we don't speak of him. Even though he's a total muppet. But another powerful saying was one said by Martin Luther King, which was, "I long for the day we are no longer judged by the color of our skin, but by the contents of our character." Which is another powerful saying. As I said earlier, I don't care if you're trans or not. I really don't. My ex-girlfriend is gender fluid, and I still care and respect them. What I care about is who you are as a person. That is what I will use to judge you and formulate my opinions on you. And if you want me to change my opinions, then you have to change yourself and stop being less of an asshole. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way first before I get a bunch of morons having to go at me for attacking someone who is trans. And if you want to talk about me attacking someone, take a look in the fucking mirror, you brain-dead hypocrite. But this basically all started from Rev making a tweet highlighting these two tweets from Nyara talking about trans kids. Alright, look, let's get this out of the way. Kids cannot be trans, I'm sorry, but they can't. And truth be told, neither can adults. The only real way for a man to be a woman, or vice versa, is if they are genetically born man or woman, but their body shows the opposite. It's called pseudo-hermaphroditism, and yes, it is a real medical term. Look it up. And yes, there are also people born with both XX and XY chromosomes. That is called mosaicism. Seriously, I get the feeling none of these nitwits grew up watching House. But as I already stated, if you are an adult who claims to be trans, I don't care. I'm still gonna treat you the same way I would someone who isn't until you give me a reason to stop. But children can't be trans. I mean, for Christ's sakes, half the time kids are wanting to be the next Ash Ketchum, and other times they're playing with their Lego and slamming it into the floor. And I don't care if you share this with people to prove your argument, because in actuality, you're doing the opposite. As well as proving that learning to read is a necessity. This thing is for a UK website, and even if it wasn't, a major highlight is the description. I'll read it for you, as you clearly failed to. Children under the age of 16 can consent to their own treatment if they're believed to have enough intelligence, competence, and understanding. Note how I put emphasis on the word if? It's because it's a big fucking key here. As well as the 3 criteria, none of which kids actually have. I mean, let's be real, we were all kids. How many of us actually understood anything that was going on TV? Hell, when I was a kid during Easter, I saw a box containing a chocolate egg that was kinda broken, and I legit began eating it. Because I was a kid, and I was a fuckwit. And it was chocolate. But that's the point I'm making. Kids aren't intelligent enough to know what going through what you're wanting them to go through will actually do to them. And there are dozens of people who went through it as a child who later regretted it and are fucking miserable because of it. This is a legitimate story I came across, and it broke my fucking heart. A mother told a story of her daughter who was depressed, who also started checking out this LGBTQ whatever the fuck thing at school, and she came home thinking that she might be that. The mother wasn't entirely convinced it was a good idea, and the school took her daughter away from her and transitioned her. And what makes it worse is that it didn't help her. If anything, it made her worse. She was straight up fucking miserable to the point where she literally took her own life. And I'm not mentioning this to exploit the death of this poor girl. I'm bringing it up because this is a serious thing that can and will affect you for the rest of your life with no true way of reversing it, and I don't want to be responsible for a kid growing up and going through that only for them to realize that it was a mistake and that there's no take-backsies. But getting back to the tweet before going off on a tangent, Rev highlights 2 tweets made by Nyara, with one talking about how it's bad for trans kids, not real, to be forced to wait for HRT. I'm assuming that means being made to go through the puberty of the body that you were born with? And another that basically tells you enough with the top 7 words. Also, if you want to be a part of society, just act fucking normal and respectful and don't be a cunt. It's not rocket science, people. But Rev goes on to state that kids can't consent to life-altering decisions like this, and also effectively calls VTubers who are too cowardly to stand up for kids out of fear of not being politically correct, well, cowards, basically. And they are! They are so concerned with being politically correct, they will support this type of crap, and after receiving backlash for it, attack their own audience for not being supportive. Or at the very least, double down. Anyway, Nyara then comments about the wrong fucking thing, because clearly the idiot can't read, as they think Rev was complaining about the thumbnails when it's pretty clear he wasn't, and even Rev has to point it out that it was about what Nyara was saying. And then they tell Straub to read the full tweets, which we have, and then ended up having a bunch of people reply calling them a pedo, essentially, and that they should stay away from kids. And then Nyara decides to act like a victim. On what fucking planet, mate? And claim that both Rev and Straub are harassing him while also stating trans kids exist, which is about as accurate as Michael Jordan being my uncle. And Straub addresses that by stating how Nyara is opening themselves up for criticism. I'm not using Nyara's preferred pronouns, but I ain't gonna call Nyara a he, so I'm using a middle ground. Bite me. By never shutting up about topics like this and saying shit like, we're never gonna leave the kids alone, which is a seriously fucked up thing to say in of itself, and that they are getting the attention they seem to be seeking. Then Nyara decides to change tactics and effectively say that this is why content creators don't want to go near her. And this is the moment where I say, fuck the middle ground, I'm gonna call you a guy and you're gonna deal with it. Like, what the fuck is that even supposed to do? Apart from, of course, make you out as a total brat who realized the victim card wasn't working and decided the arsehole card might be worth a shot. And I agree with Straub here. That's very much a bully thing to do. All you are doing is hurting yourself and damaging any chance of actually getting to work with other creators yourself. Whereas Straub, I don't think, cares about that. She's perfectly happy doing her own thing, chilling with her straw babies, and that's enough for her. And this so-called apology feels... I honestly don't know, but it doesn't feel like an actual apology, considering he then proceeded to say, but. Really not fully convinced, honestly. Also, I'd like to point out that Straub ratioed him in this little thread on her alt account. And it only has about 3,000 followers. Just wanted to bring that up. Now, apparently Nyara doesn't seem to know what actual harassment looks like, and also seems to be completely incapable of taking criticism, because he then made a... Okay, if any of you are wondering why I exactly stopped calling Nyara they as a middle ground, it's because I don't respect bullies. You want me to respect you? Show some fucking respect to yourself. Simple as that. Anyway, Nyara doesn't seem to know the difference between criticism and harassment, as he ended up making this tweet calling her transphobic and how she endorses harassment. See where I think Nyara doesn't know the difference? Anyway, Straub calls BS and says that no one is harassing Nyara and that encouraging kids to go through life-altering surgeries is where she draws the line, while also calling Nyara an attention seeker. Straub also states that she regretfully watched the 2 videos mentioned earlier, and Nyara goes to prove that he clearly missed health class in school. Puberty is a natural thing our bodies go through. Again, the only way a guy can be a girl or vice versa is if they have pseudo-hermaphroditism, which is something you have to be born with, I should point out. And a lot of people replied to Nyara basically calling him uneducated, and even pointing out how HRT has its own health risks, which I don't think he seems to be aware of. However, the only person who seemed to be on Nyara's side was Lily, who goes on saying how it's bad to force trans kids to go through the wrong puberty, and how there's no way of justifying trans lives not mattering over others, which is something nobody said. And Fire then comes in to inform Lily about trans regret, which is a real thing with tons of videos and Reddit stories talking about it, and even asks Lily for the stats about trans regret being the lowest form of regret, and acting like they know far more about this than Fire does, when it's pretty obvious that that's not the case whatsoever. Even Chris Crass comes in to educate Lily, who... You know what? I'm not even gonna bother with this, because just reading Lily's shit is making my brain want to bludgeon itself. So let's get back to the main story of the video. Rev makes a quote tweet talking about how trans activists will never leave kids alone, and we all know why, reiterating how kids cannot consent, which is something these morons clearly don't seem to understand the definition of. And then Nyara replies with... Like, what the actual fuck type of argument even is this in regards to Rev's tweet? A, they're not the same fucking thing, and B, no, his audience doesn't. They understand that lollies are adults who just so happen to have childlike features, but they very much are adults. I even brought this up in my video on MEOK using a 32-year-old character who looks like she should still be in kindergarten from a fucking hentai. And there are actually real people that do have this going for them. Adults who, for reasons unknown, grew up to remain looking like a child, and as a result, getting dates or anything becomes a major fucking nightmare as the guy they do manage to score a date with ends up having to look over his shoulder for 3 minutes to make sure he's not about to get abused by Chris Hansen and co. Also, the thing that makes it somewhat funny is that it's pretty obvious the guy is just deflecting. Rev even calls Nyara out on it, resulting in Nyara stating how liars complain about lies. You know, I'm starting to think Nyara doesn't have a mirror, as then he'd actually know what a liar looks like, as all he has done is just spit out crap and bullshit. And no, he never answered Rev's question on if kids can consent or not. But this person did in what I can only describe as Einar's levels of stupid, as measles and life-changing surgery aren't even close to being the same fucking thing. Hell, they're not even in the same fucking ballpark! Which Hiro Rukasu points out, to which Deez's eye responds with... Yeah, I'm terribly sorry, but my brain just can't comprehend what the fuck this twat's on about. Let's break down just how stupid this comparison is. Comparing not letting your kid get life-changing surgery to not giving them life-saving medicine to measles is about as brain-dead and retarded as comparing COVID to a stomachache. They're not even close. And no, it's not fucking reversible, you dipshit, because the problem is they won't want the fucking blockers until they're older and realize that they made a huge fucking mistake. Plus, another issue they'll have is the environment they live in with friends, schools, and maybe even family. Actually, especially fucking family, encouraging them to take them and turn into the opposite gender of how they were actually born. So even if the puberty blockers are reversible, because of the environment they live in, it ain't gonna happen. Also, are you 100% sure they are reversible? Because I just googled it, and some was saying it's questionable as to whether they are or not. Now let's move on to Barcode Boys being a dumbass posting whatever the fuck this image is, apart from something I'll no doubt be seeing in my nightmares tonight, to which Rev just responds with a screenshot of Barcode Boys, or Chips, pinned tweet. And this basically sums that up. Back to Nyara, who still hasn't gotten it yet, decides to ask Rev if a kid can be transgender, to which she ends up getting a response from Straw posting these, which I'll just post here and let you read for yourselves. And if you need, you can just pause the video and resume after you're done. But she's not really wrong. It is better to let them wait until they turn 18 before they then decide to go ahead and do it, as they'll at that point be an adult and can make decisions for themselves. Even though some of them shouldn't be allowed to. Myself included. But Nyara still refuses to believe no kid can be trans, and despite being down for being DM'd about it for debates, I really don't think there's any way of changing Nyara's mind. And then Toby comes out of nowhere to say Straub is just as bad as Rev. Your guess is as good as mine as to what the fuck the numpty's on about there, to which leads to whatever the fuck this is, with a Dorothy meme that basically seems rather apt, in my opinion. Then Nyara makes a quote tweet of Straub's response, to which he still calls her a transphobe, which she isn't, while also bringing up research. I'm assuming that also includes research done by actual professionals who don't have an agenda and have even highlighted the downsides to the crap you're on about, to which More or Less and Catherine come in and say some claims I'd honestly just like to see them prove, otherwise what they're doing is just straight up slander and defamation. That, or taking certain things they said out of context. Or a combination of both, as Straub actually saw Catherine's tweet and responded by talking about how she had free lunch and food stamps at school, which I actually never experienced, but I'm guessing that's because American schools and New Zealand schools are very different. At the primary school I went to, yes, I'm gonna go off on a tangent, it's my video, bite me, they did sausage sizzles on Thursdays for $2, which I would rarely get as Dad wasn't overly thrilled about it. He also wasn't all that keen about us buying our own lunch by the time we hit high school as, and I'm quoting him here, we have shit in the house. Even though we only did it Fridays, and even then, it wasn't every Friday. Plus, sometimes we just wanted something a little different. The high school I went to, we had a little shack where you buy small things like cookies and chocolate bars, and on the other side of school was a full-fledged cafeteria where you could get chips and nuggets and burgers and whatever else you'd find. And I agree with her about the all-or-nothing mentality, although I don't think it's actually called that, but this, however, her point still stands regardless. In fact, this entire fucking tweet stands. Because that's how people who think with this stupid with me or against me mentality operate while surrounding themselves with people who think the exact same. They not only live inside an echo chamber, but they operate as if they are part of a hive mind. Buddy, we're human beings capable of independent thought, not the fucking Borg. Oh, by the way, in regards to this question Nyara asked, yeah, Rev responded by not only answering, but even asking his original question, which Nyara never answered. Then I think Nyara goes on to show that he's clearly missing a few brain cells, as after posting whatever the fuck this is, Venceville responds by stating that kids cannot comprehend the influences and consequences of undergoing such dramatic changes to their body. Which is true, they can't, as stated earlier, kids are morons, to which Nyara responds with, so you don't want cis kids going through puberty. First of all, just like there's no such thing as trans kid, there's no such thing as a cis one. In fact, many people don't identify as cis because we don't recognize it as true. All that label is you forcing yet another thing onto us that we did not consent or agree to. So kindly take your cis crap and stick it up your ass. Secondly, why the fuck did Venceville even say that? Like, reread what it was they actually said and point out to me where they said anything in the question you just asked. Because not even Venceville understands what the fuck you're on about with putting words in their mouth, nor what even led you to that conclusion, and goes on to say that they want all kids to develop and grow into adults naturally. And then, in one of the most classic cases of deflection, Nyara accuses them of wanting to force kids to go through life-altering changes. It's puberty, not a double vasectomy via anal probing. Nyara also proves that he clearly skipped health class in school because last I checked, procedures have fuck all to do with going through puberty. Not unless you got really horny and accidentally got your dick stuck in the nozzle of a vacuum cleaner and can't get it out, in which case, have you tried turning it off? Venceville then asked a really good question to which should be asked a lot fucking more, and it takes them asking it twice for Nyara to actually answer with, I'm not even touching that. I'm leaving that for people like Charlie Kirk who have far more knowledge about the situation. Then someone who I actually do follow, Samantha Shadowslayer, who is trans by the way, even goes on to state that they actually have gender dysphoria and makes a fairly good breakdown, honestly, I think. I'd also like to point out that Samantha doesn't go around pushing trans stuff on kids or anything like that. Samantha's actually one of the type of trans people I can respect, which is the ones who just want to be left the fuck alone and live their life while still treating everyone with respect and decency. Trans Samantha may be, but they don't live inside of an echo chamber. Anyway, speaking of, Percival then says they aren't rational and even asks a question I don't even understand, which even leaves Samantha baffled. Naomi even joins in, stating she looked at Samantha's timeline and saw evidence of them giving credibility to transphobic talking points, to which Samantha responds with asking for proof so they can explain their points. Getting back to the main story at hand, Nyara then makes this tweet that is quite literally nothing but lies, as there is not a single shred of harassment within the screenshot he provided. And then Rev comes in to call him out once again, and even point out how other trans people disagree with him never wanting to leave the kids alone. And I think that's something that should be pointed out here. Just because there are a bunch of trans people who want to do this to kids, that doesn't mean they all do. There are actually some trans people that think it's wrong and will even state as such, resulting in the rest of the trans community calling them fake and not real trans, to which I think they should probably look in the mirror to see what a real fake trans person looks like. That's also why I don't like the LGBTQIAXCLMNOP community, because of that exact mindset of how you must agree with everything I say or you will be cancelled, which I think just shows how fucked the education system is in some schools. Trans people I have no real qualms with if they act like decent human beings, respecting others as well as their opinions, even if they don't overly agree with it and act civilized. Members of what people refer to as the alphabet soup community, not so much. I have no respect for it and it's become a shadow of its former self. It forgot what the original fucking message was and has now been hijacked and turned into what might as well be labeled as a cult with how they act, resulting in the L, G, and B to jump ship and form their own thing fighting against them. If you want to identify as any of these things, then I really don't give a shit as long as you treat me exactly how you want me to treat you. That's how respect works. But the moment you get kids involved, that's where problems start to come up. And I think Nyara should probably take his own advice here. And Rev basically hits him with a reality check while Nyara continues to prove that he doesn't even exist in reality as he continues to double down and just straight up refuses to acknowledge the harm of doing what he is advocating for to kids, which has to be spelled out to him by same as always, and in a very good descriptive fashion too. Then Stan shows up again with Rev then delivering the kill shot. Honestly, I don't even like talking about these type of things on my channel, and I will actively avoid them as best I can because I know that these are touchy subjects and I'd just rather not bother. But what made this case the exception was Nyara bullying Shorb and acting like how he knows more about this than both her and her husband, while simultaneously proving that he lives in an echo chamber. The type of mentality he has is both wrong and unhealthy, as that is what will destroy relationships later down the line, because no one wants to deal with that level of toxicity and would rather work at Lux and have their boss be Lucifer Morningstar. That or work with Dr. House and get ridiculed every hour or so. And with how you act, Nyara, you are less likely to have creators reach out to collab with you than Shorb is. And the final message of the video? Leave the fucking kids alone!